Bad. Are you in the Carolinas right now?
We are. We're in Charlotte, North Carolina. That's right.
Wow. Okay. I lived in, I think it was Waxhaw, North Carolina, like right outside Uptown 2 summers ago. I don't know where you're at.
Yeah, I'm technically in Rock Hill, South Carolina, so just south of Charlotte. And our keyboard player, Josh, lives in Waxhaw.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, I know Rock Hill's like literally the town right next over. It took me a while to understand how close the two were. I was like, I have to go get gas, and my uncle's just like, oh, yeah, go to Rock Hill. It's a lot cheaper in South Carolina to get gas as opposed to here.
Yeah, so Charlotte's right on the border. So, I mean, I say Charlotte because it's the big metropolitan, but yeah, if you want to get specific, we're in South Carolina.
Yeah, and I always tell people I live right outside Manhattan. That's where I grew up. So I'm like, yeah, I live, New York City, as opposed to saying like Fort Lee, New Jersey, or
exactly
my actual state.
Avoid the conversation at the end,
Oh, yeah, I know. It's so much easier to say that. So much cooler sounding, too.
Yeah, you say Rock Hill, people are like, where? I don't know. I don't know.
So you guys, kind of just to get right into it, I don't waste too much of your time, just came out with a new single. Mr. Danger came out a few months ago, too, and the whole album is going to come together, right? The new record's going to come out when? In a few months?
The record comes out March 26th.
March 20th. Oh, so very soon.
Yep, very soon.
How many songs are you guys going to have on that album?
There are 10 songs total, and obviously 2 of them, the lead singles you've already heard, so Mr. Danger and Sucker Punch. Right.
And a big song I liked when you guys first came out with it was She's Reckless. What happened to it? Did you guys take it off like all of your
Basically what happened was we replaced our lead singer. So we pulled everything down that we did have. We took kind of our favorites and redid them with our new lead singer, Alvy. And so we had originally 5 songs out, like way back when. And 4 of those are ended up on the album. So,
was it a bitter ending? Is that why?
No, it was amicable. He was just ready to move on and wasn't really into what we were doing, and vice versa. So, we decided to move on, and then we found Ali, which was perfect because it fit, like a glove, and we immediately got to work and moved on. So,
how quick was that turnaround for you guys?
That was pretty quick. We ended up parting ways with him in June, and Alvy was in. I think we started rehearsing him, July, and then we had him in August. So, and this is all last summer. So this all happened real quick.
I mean, I guess you had a lot of time since everybody was kind of locked in their homes for 6 months or so. So you had a lot of time to get everything together, get a lot of new material out, start again, like trying to click and everything.
Yeah.
So how does this, culminate for you guys? Because like He Leaves, was it just more about, like the sound, or was it the way you guys were going? Like why the creative differences there?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It was a little bit of everything, but I think, and I can't really speak for him.
Yeah.
I think, it came down to he just didn't really want to be a part of what we were doing. And, we needed someone that did want to be a part of it. And there was no bad feelings there, no bad blood or anything. We definitely parted as friends. And I think he was actually happier when he received the call from me that, we'd be moving without him. I could tell it was like a sigh of relief. And that I feel like maybe it had been something he wanted to do for a while, but didn't want to ruffle any feathers or cause any problems or anything like that. So, but yeah, it all happened for the best, and everybody's happier now, and that's kind of good. I think we definitely went through some small growing pains, like the day after we announced it. Of course, we get all these comments going like, oh, you guys will never be the same. You suck now. Good luck. Like you just shot yourselves in the foot. Like just all these comments, and yeah, it definitely feeling a little bit vindicated now as we come out bigger and stronger than we ever were before. So
I definitely feel like you guys have like the same influences when it comes to music, whether it was GNR, Cornell, Soundgarden, Zeppelin, like all of those, bands that kind of like set the tone early on in like the late 70s, 80s, even 90s with the grunge scene for you guys. Is anybody else kind of just like differently attached when it comes to music influences for you guys to, again, like come together and create your own sound?
Yeah, so our sound definitely is inspired by, all of our favorites, a lot of the ones you just mentioned. And that shines through pretty clearly, I think, in our music, which we're happy about. And, we wear like a badge of honor. It's what we like to do. We play what we want to hear. So we write the music, we want a band to make. And then and we end up, being super happy with what we've created. But as far as our individual music tastes, very eclectic. We all listen to a lot of stuff, and honestly, not as much rock as you would think. We've been over the last few weeks building a podcast studio for our upcoming podcast, and we're always cranking tunes in there. And I can't think of one rock song we've played while we've been working on that. It's all been pop, hip hop, jazz, blues, funk, soul, all this other stuff that and those elements seep into our individual styles and our individual playing, and then of course end up coming through in our music. Subtle ways you wouldn't really necessarily pick up on them unless you were really dissecting what was going on, because your first instinct is going to be rock, which is good. That's what we want you to do. But if you dig a little deeper, you'll hear some Prince, funk riffs, little things like that, jazzier chords, more interesting things going on that might not meet the eye at first, or meet the ear, I suppose.
Right. Are any of these new songs on the new record kind of, vindicate that statement, in the sense of like, all right, we're kind of experimenting with other stuff as opposed to just rock songs?
Not obviously. I wouldn't say it does that obviously. I think you'll listen to this record top to bottom. It's a rock solid rock record. And I think everyone's going to agree with that. And I'll send it to you after we get off the call, and you can let me know what you think. Because we've been sending it out to reviewers and stuff, and we've been getting those kind of comments back. But yeah, what we try to do, like Mr. Danger, for example, is very AC/DC influenced, and we put that out first to tie in with Alvy's history and story of almost being in AC/DC. So that was a calculated move there for the first single. The second single, Sucker Punch, we kind of went a different route. I think most people would agree that does not really sound like AC/DC. No. And then the rest of the album kind of has different pockets like that as well. It doesn't all sound like AC/DC. It doesn't all sound like this. It doesn't all sound like that. There's slower songs, or a couple really, that let Alvy shine in a different light, where he's not always screaming like Brian Johnson. And then there's heavier songs. There's fun songs with like backing vocals and like gang vocals and harmonies and stuff. There's just a lot of fun stuff going on this record, and we just can't wait to get it out there.
He was almost an AC/DC.
Yeah, so in 2016, when Brian Johnson had to bow out of the tour for hearing loss, they called a few people, 4 people to be exact, to audition for the band, and Alvy was one of those 4. Obviously, Axl Rose was one of those 4 as well, and ended up getting the gig. So
tough competition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they flew him down to Atlanta. And he did the whole audition, played with the guys and all that stuff. So it's a pretty cool story.
Yeah, I feel like you can't turn down Axl Rose. That's tough competition, man.
Yeah, I mean, he comes with rock star status as well. Big clap. It's a good business move,
Oh, 1,000%. It was a pleasant surprise too. I went to one of those shows at MSG that summer in 2016, because that was literally the same year that Slash and Axl hooked up again, and Guns N' Roses and their true form finally came back together after like 10 to 15 years of Axl playing, with Richard Fortus and those guys. Good sound. It was just like not the same though. Like you couldn't go to one of those shows and have it be like, okay, it's nice to hear, but it's not Guns N' Roses, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
So when you're growing up and you're finding your taste in music, you're kind of finding your identity in what you want to do. Why rock music? Why were those the influences right off the bat for you?
For me, it was literally one song, and that was "Welcome to the Jungle" by Guns N' Roses. I heard, a family friend, older sister kind of figure played it for me. She's like, "You got to hear this," and I thought the intro was cool. I was like, whatever, and then the riff dropped, and I knew immediately that's what I wanted to do. So I picked up guitar as fast as I could, and just ran with it. I picked up guitar at 12, so just never looked back. Always practiced, got as good as I could, as fast as I could. And from there, after I kind of wore out all the 80s rock and the hair metal and stuff, I kind of went into more of the technical stuff, Paul Gilbert, Dream Theater, Guthrie Govan, those kind of people. And I try to bring some of that into my playing as well. So it's a lot of, sloppy blues rock mixed with, technical shred. And I try to live kind of somewhere in the middle of those two things.
I mean, obviously it's great to have different influences, so you're able to like look back at everything and culminate together and make your own sound based on your own experiences, both whether it's music or life experiences. Because again, I feel like a lot of songs that you'd write come from those real life experiences, if not just like great jams at the end of the day? Are any of these songs on the record like coming from personal experiences for either one of you six? Because again, like new record, you want it to sound as authentic as possible. Are there any, real life experiences culminating in these songs?
100%. I wouldn't say necessarily, a specific life experience, but
Right.
I definitely would say the culmination of all the life experiences shine through in a lot of these songs, particularly a song like Fake or Sucker Punch, which is kind of dealing with coming up, trying to be a musician and fighting against all the naysayers and that kind of thing. So definitely, yeah, a lot of that on there. And I think a lot of our authenticity comes from, this is just truly the music we want to write and want to hear. And I think that shines through more than anything. So we write a song that we really like the sound of. We're not trying to be like, okay, this is going to be hot, let's write this. It's none of that. It's like whatever we want to write, we write, and we put it out there, and hopefully people start to attach to it. And it seems like they are so far, which is good. And the album hasn't even come out yet, so I think it'll only go up from here. So we'll just keep doing our thing.
You guys have never been, signed to like a record label or anything like that where they end up, telling you what to do and everything. Because again, I've heard, as an outsider, from an outsider's perspective, the business side of music, you hear a lot of horror stories in that sense of like almost losing your passion because you are working with people that want it to sound a different way. And once they own you, they can do whatever the heck they want. So like you guys are doing your own thing though, right?
Right now we're 100% independent, and we do work with a team. We have a team of really amazing people that are helping us, but yeah, no label, no contracts, nothing like that. And that's deliberate. That's not, us saying like, nobody's knocking, we'll sign the first thing that shows up. We've talked about what kind of deals we'll accept and what kind we won't. And there's probably about 90% of deals we won't accept, because nowadays in 2020 and 2021 and forward, there's a lot of power with an independent musician. Look at someone like Chance the Rapper, who won a Grammy or maybe even multiple Grammys without a label.
Okay.
So you can go all the way to the top without a label. I don't think it gets any higher really than, Grammy and chart topping hits. And if you can do that without a label, then why do I need a label? So definitely labels provide a lot of value to artists, but we're gonna stay independent as long as we possibly can, and grow as big as we can by ourselves. At some point, if it gets to be too much, if we can't handle it, then we might seek out the right representation or the right deal. But yeah, it's not something we're currently looking for. It's not a goal of ours. If it happens, it happens, and hopefully it'll be the right deal for us. But yeah, it's not something we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's good for you guys to realize that young, because like that's probably an enticing move for a young artist who doesn't necessarily know the business side, and they become approached by someone and be like, oh, I could make you 10 times bigger than you are right now. And
yeah, the label thing nowadays is more like a badge of honor. Like, oh, he signed. Oh my God, he made it. It's like, dude, I don't think that's making it, man. Like, you basically just signed away all your money. Like,
that's right. You signed away your music in a sense, because now they can almost dictate what you play, or at least suggest what you play moving forward.
Depending on the deal, they could own your next 5 records, your next 10 records. They have, creative control. And again, depends on the deal. Sometimes they don't have creative control. There's 360 deals now where every piece of merch you sell, they get a cut of. Every dollar you make, they get a penny or whatever of. So those are the kind of deals we want to avoid.
Oh my God, I know. And at the end of the day, I feel like in a way, mentally, you just being happy playing your own stuff, breaking through from like a mental and spiritual standpoint, creating this music that, makes you guys happy that you're doing it at the end of the day, and it's making other people happy listening to it. Like that should be your success. That should be what's driving you at the end of the day. Do you feel like, that's part of it for you guys? Like what's the ultimate goal? What's the ultimate thrill ride for you guys when it comes to finding that inner success from a mental standpoint?
I think you nailed it. It's getting our art out there that represents us as best as possible, and getting into the hands of people that connect with it, that respond to it, and seeing them sing along at shows, those kind of things. Like that's going to be all the reward we need. And consider the fact we're a very, very young band. We've been around doing stuff for a while. We've all been playing in bands for a long time. We're seasoned vets individually, but as a group, we got Alvy, our lead singer, in August 2020. So we're 6-7 months into this thing. And the album's coming out. We've been in the studio the whole time, also during a pandemic. So we have not played a show together ever. So we've been rehearsing and tightening everything up. And I think we're going to have a killer show that we can't wait to unveil. We do have one on the books March 19th in Greensboro, North Carolina. But which is kind of, local warm-up show, basically.
All right.
So we have one on the books that's going to kind of be a test for us to get our feet wet and see how everything goes. But I think it's going to be really, really awesome. Really excited about what we have.
I mean, that's a big test right before the record comes out, too, because as you know, obviously, and again, speaking from an outsider's perspective, I come from a music family. My brother is a musician, just moved to Nashville. But live shows are obviously different than what you guys record in the studio. So it's going to be a very big test for you guys before the record comes out.
Yeah, and we've put a lot of time into making sure our live show is not just us playing the songs.
Yeah.
You want to hear the songs as they're recorded by the album. It's never gonna fail you. But live, we're adding stuff, we're moving stuff, we're extending stuff, adding solos here, adding fun little individual moments here and there for everybody. And we're letting everybody's kind of abilities shine. We have where we're a rock band, we'll break it down to a classical piano thing where Josh really gets to shine. We'll do we have this really amazing little Star Wars segment because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and we have that in there. We have funk bass and drums breakdowns. We have Driz, our other guitar player, and I worked out this massively complex 32 bar dual harmonized guitar solo that's happening at the end of Peace of Mind, something in between Allman Brothers and Iron Maiden. And those kind of things are what's going to get people coming back, I think, to see the show, because you're not going to get that on the record. But live, we're putting a ton of time into making sure we deliver an experience that's the record plus the next 1,000% of fun and enjoyment and crowd involvement and all that stuff.
I mean, you're not only musicians at that point during live shows, but you're entertainers. Like, you can't just sit up there and, play to each other. Because, you've seen bands do that in the past, live at festivals and stuff. And it's just how can you get into that when, they're obviously, not paying attention to the crowd, to their fan base. So, for you guys to plan all of that stuff out is great. How big is the venue going to be with everything going on? Is it going to be 50% capacity?
I'm not actually sure what their final capacity number is. But I'm sure they have all that handled. And things are starting to actually open back up a little more. So we might even see them open up a little more before we get there, which would be cool. It's tough to play, to a sold out crowd that's, and it looks like an empty room because we've been doing it for a little while. So, but we're super stoked about the show and all shows. So, look out for us in 2021. We're going to be playing as much as we can, but we'll see how it all, shakes out. You
guys should book some shows in Texas now, since they're going back 100%, it sounds like.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. The only problem is, getting out there, and we have no fans yet, really. Just, we have little pockets here and there, but not enough to pack out a performance or something. So we got to start with our region and work out.
So how did you start out when it came to, again, because you guys are playing music, you guys know you sound good, you're creating some stuff, some singles early on, and then you realize, okay, now we have to market ourselves, promote ourselves. What did you guys do early on when it came to just telling your friends about it, which they tell their friends, and then so on and so forth, creating that popularity, at least in your region?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it starts with a solid product. I think you have to start there. Because we believed our music was good enough that most people would like it. If you like rock, you'll like us. That's what we thought. That's what we would assume. And then the question became, okay, well, if we think everyone that likes rock for the most part is going to like us, then we just have to show it to them. And then once they hear it, we trust that they're going to catch on and be like, okay, I'm in. This is good. So then that was the question. So, it was a lot of what you're saying, a lot of grassroots movement and stuff like that. But then we also hired our publicist, and he's been amazing for us as well. And he's gotten us a lot of good press, which results in eyes and stuff like that. So doing a lot of interviews and like this, and he's just been amazing. So that's one aspect of our team that we just simply couldn't operate without. And then, there's other team components as well, but that's kind of the big one, I would say, for right now where we are.
Right. And when it came to hiring a publicist, because that's a big job, again, promoting and marketing you guys, because that's, at the end of the day, going to get your stuff out there. Like, the foundation is having the passion to play and finding your sound, like you were saying. But then at the same time, you have to find someone who you can trust to get it out there. Was it an easy process finding a publicist, or was it more along the lines you had to really make sure that they believed in what you guys believed in?
No, it was very easy. We Tom George, Tag Publicity, he was recommended to us by another local band in our area, a friend of mine.
Yeah.
He recommended 3 or 4 publicists and said, but I'd call this guy first. So I called Tom, sent him some demos, and he called back immediately, and he was on fire about it. He was probably more excited than we were. He was just like, this is the best thing I've ever heard. I can't wait. Like, let's do this. What do you need? Like, all that stuff. And that's all I needed to know, was that he was excited to push it. I didn't just want someone with the thickest Rolodex,
right?
Someone who was going to believe in it and push it and help us pass, go beyond the job description, basically. So, and yeah, Tom has done that every step of the way. He's one of the best in the business, and he specializes in this new wave of classic rock movement, and a lot of our peers he also represents as well. So, it was just a natural fit. It made, it was a no-brainer.
I mean, that's perfect. That's literally what you want in a publicist, someone who believes in what you guys are doing and is almost as passionate in what you guys are doing. And you talk about, some of, your peers in those current, bands, whether it's like Dirty Honey, obviously Greta Van Fleet's taken off. When you look at bands, like that in this era where rock is, again, not really the number one genre anymore, which personally as a rock fan, very disappointing because, like you listen to the hip hop side and the rap side, which is probably number one today. And some of those people, listening to that music don't exactly like appreciate rock, but at the same time really have no rock knowledge at the same time, which is kind of hard for people to get into the genre today. Do you, look at bands like Greta Van Fleet, Dirty Honey, those alike, Highly Suspect as well. You could throw in Royal Blood, some of those bands that are like very influential, and you look at them and be like, okay, like if they can make it, we can make it in this new era of music where rock, again, is not number one anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Greta Van Fleet was the one that when they broke, I knew that this kind of music was going to come back.
Yeah.
Which was good because I was still in the process of writing a lot of these songs, and none of us knew if anyone was going to care about what we were doing.
Right.
Greta Van Fleet. So when they dropped and they came out, I thought like, okay, so there is still, people want this kind of classic rock music. And, rock as a genre is really, really young. If we think about all of the great rock metal musicians that paved the way for all of us, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, Beatles, whoever, Rolling Stones, a lot of those people are still alive. In fact, most are still alive. And the ones that died didn't die of old age necessarily. So rock is still super young. It's one generation old. Consider something like classical music, which is hundreds of years old and we've seen the evolution of classical music across hundreds of years and how that's changed. Rock's so young that we don't even know what it's like to not have the founders here with us. And in the next 30 years, they're all going to be gone, every single one of them. So what happens then? Do we just keep playing the old same stuff that we've always played, or do we turn our head to the future and look ahead to bands like us, bands like, Joyce Wolf and all the others, and pick them up and raise them up and usher in the new wave of rock, which has to happen at some point. So I think the best thing that can happen is a lot of these rock bands, as they're on their way out, whether because they're retiring or health or whatever, to turn around and give us a hand, not even us specifically, just all the artists. And we need to kind of transition into the new era at some point. And that's going to be happening slowly, probably painfully over the next, decade to 3 decades. So, in our lifetime, Jack, we're going to not see a world with Slash or Axl Rose or any of the AC/DC guys or any of the Rolling Stones, all of Aerosmith, all of every band. So that's going to be really weird. And
hopefully that's when we're like 75, 80 years old. Like you said, like 30 years, most likely they're all going to be wiped out.
Yeah. Cause cause life, it's not any, and honestly, it's amazing. We still have a lot of them because of the abuse that was put on, some of their bodies through, drugs and alcohol or whatever, but also just through touring for years and years and years and being road warriors and doing that stuff. So, it'll be really interesting to see kind of how things, shake out.
Yeah, I've never actually really looked at it from that perspective. I mean, you're right. It is one generation. You know, Jimmy Page, Robert Plant, Ozzy Osbourne.
Jimmy Page is still like alive and healthy.
Yeah, still writing stuff, still
Rock
putting stuff together, you know, like Bruce Springsteen, still there. It literally took me a couple years ago to really figure out how old Bruce Springsteen was. I thought the guy was in his mid-50s because, again, he dyes his hair, keeps himself in great shape. When you look at Ozzy, who's the same age, and, you know, he was a big rocker, big partier, so he obviously has a little wear and tear on his body. So it's kind of weird to see both of those guys go. And like you said, when it comes to those guys being on their way out, trying to help the younger generation, trying to, again, like, give back. I think Dave Grohl is the perfect example of that. I mean, he's the guy who has been the glue in rock and roll, like keeping all of these bands together, like bringing back some of those 80s guys, whether it's, you know, Rick Springfield, who, you know, went off the grid for a while before that whole Sound City documentary. Dave Grohl brings him back. I think that's probably going to be your biggest guy in supporting and bringing in these new waves of rock bands, even though it seems like they're experimenting too with other stuff. But I feel like, you know, like you specifically saying that, like what would you like to see from those guys when it comes to, like you said, kind of keeping it going once they're long gone?
Yeah. Well, I want to be careful because I definitely don't want to come off as entitled, like these guys help us. They owe us something, because they certainly do not. I think it would be nice for the whole genre for the older bands to help the younger bands, and I think they're doing that. This is obviously not me complaining or you know, being like, oh, help make me famous. Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. You know, we're just a part of a movement of bands like us. So I guess I speak for all of us, I suppose.
Oh, yeah.
without asking. So we'll see. But yeah, I think we see, you know, Guns N' Roses had Dirty Honey open for him a couple times. Slash took Dirty Honey on the road. I keep using Dirty Honey on, you know, Greta Van Fleet's doing big things on their own. They don't even necessarily open for people, but they've been doing big festivals and stuff as well. Lots of people have been, I think the opening slot, I think that's kind of what comes to my mind as being the best way to spread this word. Because you have, you know, again, people are going to like the music of Dirty Honey. They're going to like the music of, you know, the LA Maybe and whoever else. So getting it out there in front of as many people, you know, getting on an opening slot of an AC/DC tour, you know, what could potentially be their final tour, or, you know, Guns or whatever, and getting that music out in front of people. I think once you get it out there, people are going to realize, oh, this is great stuff. Let's, you know, add them right here on our phone right now while we're listening. And yeah, I think that's a big part of what has to happen. But also, you know, it's social media these days. You could just, it's a simple tweet. It's a simple Instagram post. Hey, check these guys out, you know, from Axl Rose, who has, you know, God knows how many millions of followers, like just little things like that. Because everybody, it's an information overload, right? There's a band out there that I'm sure is your favorite band. I'm sure is my favorite band that we don't know about, that wants us to know about them. But there's a disconnect there because there's so much information we can't really dig through it and find them efficiently. So at both sides trying to find each other, but they can't because there's just so much noise. So, you know, how do we cut through that? It would be with the assist of bigger platforms. So we were fortunate enough to be in Loudwire and in Guitar World and in a couple other big publications, and that helped boost us a ton. So those kind of things, you know, everybody helping everybody. That's kind of what we're about.
It's almost like a new struggle in the sense, because again, we do have social media, we do have the new technology to get, you know, people like you, like the LA Maybe out there via social media. All it takes is one click, one tweet, one Instagram post. But at the same time, there's millions of others doing it. Where back in the day, it's like you literally had to know the right people or else you weren't getting your big break, you know, for guys, whether it was, you know, the Guns N' Roses with Axl, you know, hiking from Indiana or wherever he was to LA to get his start, finding those guys, the grunge era, the Seattle scene, because nobody really expected that to take off. That was very organic in its own right. So it's almost a different kind of struggle for this generation. Like everybody's going to get their stuff out there. It's just like you said, like that disconnect with a fan base that may not see it because there's so many other things that they could listen to. There's so many other things that are going to be blocking their feeds before they find you.
Yeah, well, in you know, in 80s, 70s, 60s, you had a lot less bands too. So you might have one Led Zeppelin, where nowadays you have Led Zeppelin A, Led Zeppelin B, Led Zeppelin C, Led Zeppelin D, Led Zeppelin E, and they all offer something slightly different. So I might gravitate towards Led Zeppelin A, but you might gravitate towards Led Zeppelin F. Like all these bands kind of have a strong influence of Led Zeppelin, but kind of bring their own thing to it as well. And so as there's more people, as there's less of a barrier to entry, that we don't have to go into multi-million-dollar studios anymore with a huge budget to cut an album. I can do it from my computer for free with a couple, free plugins. And it probably would sound like garbage, but I could do it and put it out there. And then you hear it and say, man, this is garbage. There's no hope for music anymore. And meanwhile, they're good bands doing it as well, but they're competing with the garbage, So it's like, there's just a lot of noise going on. So you have to try to figure out how to cut through the noise.
So when you're putting together, these records and you're trying to get your stuff out there and you have people give you feedback saying like whether it's great, it's suckish, it's awesome, you guys rock, I don't like what you're doing. Like you look at Greta Van Fleet and immediately I feel like at least in that first album, everybody's like, oh, they sound like Zeppelin. I think they were influenced by Sabbath. A lot of people are just hear Robert Plant right off the bat when you hear the kid. And then you have bands like Airborne. It's like, okay, AC/DC to a T, right? So you guys obviously influenced by these bands when you put out your music, but at the same time, you're looking to put out your own sound. So what type of reaction are you guys hoping for when you're putting out, whether it's the new record coming out on the 26th or any of your old stuff? What are you looking to hear from your fan base when it comes to like the regard of the band's sound?
Yeah, that's interesting. Comparisons I think are as annoying as they can be. Yeah. They are kind of inevitable.
Oh yeah.
You don't want to, put your own thing out there and then someone's first reaction is, sounds like AC/DC. Like, it's like, okay, man, thanks. Like I spent, 6 months on this. You don't want that necessarily. But also like, I'm not so naive to know that I'm not going to act confused. Like, what do you mean? It sounds like AC/DC. I get it. But we're also bringing our own thing to it too. So I think, a little bit of more critical listening, listening past just your first instincts, maybe try to listen to it with a fresh ear and stop trying to compare it to everything you've ever heard. But again, that's a natural thing to do. We've all heard stuff and we're all going to compare it to stuff. That's just kind of what we do. But, I think it's foolish to think that we're not bringing our own stuff to the table as well. Mm-hmm. So there's, obvious influences of whoever you want to, discuss, but we're also bringing our own thing to where you can't quite say we sound exactly like A, B, C, or D. Maybe one song leans more towards, AC/DC, one song leans more towards Guns N' Roses, but there's elements of other things within that song as well. And as you listen through the whole album, I think you're going to realize, okay, these guys have more to offer than kind of like a Use Your Illusion.
Oh yeah.
A lot more going on than just, one thing. So I think that's what we're trying to do. That's the reaction I'd hope for.
I mean, that's a perfect example because that was a totally different record, totally different sound, a lot of different moving parts, at least in a few of those songs. And you obviously being a big GNR guy, I'm a big GNR guy. Slash was your original inspiration to play guitar, right? Like you said, Welcome to the Jungle was your first thing. What certain elements of his craft do you think inspired you at a young age?
It was just the way he phrased everything. It was just different than other stuff I'd heard, and it spoke to me in a way that other people didn't, even that were similar, like a Jimmy Page. Love Jimmy Page, but his music doesn't, or his solos in particular, don't speak to me the way that, someone's like Slash's do. And Slash had that element of speed and technicality as well.
Yeah.
And he didn't come from it at like a robotic kind of maniac way like a Paul Gilbert would, where Paul Gilbert's just a machine. He can't mess up, it seems. Slash comes at it from a more organic way, where the stuff he's playing fast is different and weird and interesting, and it has a lot of, some of it's off time and some of it's, missing notes here and there, and all that kind of adds up to that bluesy, I call it swag, that, a guitar player has.
I mean, it's definitely a different sound. Like when you obviously, I'm sure everybody back in the day when they first heard that, like, you're right, it's not Jimmy Page. Like that guy, an inspiration in his own right. But when you hear Guns N' Roses for the first time, whether it is Slash's riffs or Axl's voice, like totally different. Like they were the bridge, late 80s between those, like you said, hair bands to the grunge era with the Kurt Cobains and the Cornells and Alice in Chains, Pearl Jam, wherever you want to go with that. But it was just a different sound. Like he was the first, I guess, guitarist you could say that just like was like in your face rock music, like the bridge between, like I said, metal and grunge in that late 80s stage that really hadn't happened before. And I think it's very hard to find, you know, like you talk about like being inspired by other people to create your own sound, but at the same time, it's very difficult to find that sound that nobody has ever heard before. At least for those people who keep an open mind to it and think like, okay, this is just like AC/DC, this is just like GNR. But it's very hard for someone to be like, whoa, this is something we've never heard before, and these guys are going to be huge.
Yeah, and I think if it's something we've never heard before, odds are it's probably not very good because we've heard everything. So, you know, it's at this point we're kind of just evolving on things that have already been done, all of us, not, you know, going back as far as you want to you know, the 20s. So it's not like, you know, AC/DC was doing anything entirely fresh, you know, musically. Right. Of course, it was a new thing kind of as a group that everyone responded to. And I think we see that with a lot of those other bands as well. But yeah, so in the early 80s, you know, you were dealing with the Van Halen effect where everyone was trying to copy him. And then, you know, Motley Crue came around and they kind of started the glam thing.
Oh, yeah.
A bit. And then that mid period of the 80s, you had a lot of Motley Crue, Van Halen, you know, wannabes kind of doing their thing. And then Guns came along as kind of the antithesis to that. They were like, we're going to go back. We're going to skip all that and go back to like the mid 70s, early 70s and take that as our sound and kind of do that in the modern day at the time of 85, 86, 87. And that's, I think, a big part of why they blew up, you know, plus of course, just great songs, great hooks, all that stuff. So, and, you know, killer frontman.
Oh yeah. I mean, it was just like that in your face type mentality that they had. They were just very different. Like I said, one of those 80s bands, like you can say that they were, you know, put them with the Van Halens or the Metallicas or whatever, but they were just different. They were like that bridge of new bands that obviously culminated in the grunge era and so on and so forth in the early 2000s. And I feel like it's just a very different breed, that style of music, and obviously it inspired millions. I mean, you guys played a GNR gig, like as Guns N' Roses for Halloween, right?
Yeah, we did that. That was fun. And then Alvy's done a GNR tribute. We've done a GNR tribute. So we know that world pretty well. We could probably still whip out a couple songs at least.
Yeah.
So between all of us.
You guys started out as a Journey band, right? Like a Journey tribute band?
A couple of us met our drummer and me, Foz. We were in a Journey tribute. So I played Neil Schon and he played Steve Smith, and that was super fun too. So, you know, we've done our fair share of tributes and all that stuff, but we left that band to try to do our own thing, to try to do original music. And you know, that's kind of where we went from here.
I feel like that's how most bands start out. They target their inspirations, they play those gigs, and then eventually that culminates into them, you know, expanding their minds, expanding their knowledge, and, you know, you guys creating your own stuff at the end of the day. How early on did you guys form the band? Like when you knew that, okay, we want to start finding our own stuff, you find different players, which culminates now 6 of you. How did that all culminate?
So the first time we came up with the name The LA Maybe was 2016, and it was 4 of us from the Journey band that wanted to do it. Singer, bass, drums, and song. And you know, we wanted to do the original stuff. We started to do some original stuff, but then we also wanted to make a little money, so we started making a variety band set. So we came up with a big long list, and, you know, we learned 50, 60 songs, and it truly was a variety. We'd play everything from Welcome to the Jungle to Boston to Backstreet Boys to Bruno Mars to, I mean, just all sorts of stuff, and everything in between. Stevie Wonder, Prince, and you know, obviously that desire to make a little bit of you know, pocket change took us away from the original stuff because we were so focused on learning, you know, 60 songs over the course of whatever and putting together that show. And then we did that show for a while, and then at one point during that show we replaced our bass player, so we got our current bass player now, Rasan. He's been with us since those days. And then we replaced, we had a couple other guitar players besides me throughout we always wanted to be a dual guitar band, and could never find the right guy until we found Drizzle, and Drizzle just fit in like a glove. And he's actually a professional sound man. So he ended up running our sound for us at the variety gig. So we would travel as our full 5-piece, but only 4 of us were on stage. And then one day I actually just finished reading Steve Gorman's book, The Drummer for the Black Crowes. And I started thinking, like, because he was talking about their keyboard player and all that stuff, and I went back and listened to, you know, some of my favorite Crows records, and I was like, well, they have keys. That's awesome. We should have keys. So we found Josh pretty quickly. He was the first person we found, and he fit like a glove with everything. So then we kind of had our full band, but with our old singer, and we started writing some stuff, and then we changed lead singers, and that was last summer. So that about brings it up to date. So, you know, every band's kind of goes through those lineup changes, you know, people come, people go. And yeah, we ended up with a full 6-piece, which I think is probably pretty rare these days.
I mean, when you talk about, you know, some of these pieces, you know, quote unquote, fitting like a glove and stuff like that, like, do you know instinctively, like, this sounds right, or this sounds great, but at the same time, it's not exactly what we want? Because I feel like it's very hard to, again, find those pieces in order to culminate that specific and unique sound that you guys have. Do you look at that and think, like, okay, like, we sound great, but this isn't it? Or how many guys did you actually have to go through in order to find those key 5 pieces?
Not that many, actually. It was a lot of friends and references and referrals and stuff like that. So we got to the right people pretty quick. The one thing we did have to do was we held a bunch of bass player auditions. So for bass player, we did have, you know, 4, 5, 6 guys come in. And it's not, you believe it or not, it's not really about the playing. Everyone we've played with is awesome. It's more about the personality and the drive. And do we laugh at the same jokes? Do I feel like you're in this with me, as opposed to just being a hired gun? Or are we going to be able to are you going to pick up a rope on the sled we're pulling and we all keep pulling the same direction? Or are you going to be someone that just sits in the back of the sled, you know, that kind of thing. So it's more about that. Like, it's a lot of like, come over, let's hang out for a couple hours, maybe bring your guitar, we'll jam or whatever. But it's not. And then, you know, after they kind of pass the one-on-one test with me, in the case of Drizzle, because he was the other guitar player, then we brought it to the full band and that kind of stuff. So went through, you know, a couple other guitar players, but not a lot. But yeah, finding the right guitar player was tricky to find the right person to work with. But man, we nailed it. Drizzle is the best.
Oh yeah.
So we mesh perfectly musically. We mesh perfectly personality wise. There's the perfect amount of give and take, and it's awesome. So yeah.
I mean, you're right. The person side of it, again, like the identity factor of having your personalities meshing is way more important than the actual music, because you guys could become the biggest rock band in America today, but if you don't get along, like, it's not going to be a fun experience. Eventually, you guys are going to burn out. And especially once you guys go on and do bigger things and you start looking at the business side of things, like, is everybody going to be in tune with what you guys are trying to accomplish? Is everybody going to be pulling their own weight, like you said? Like, those are going to be the big factors that determine whether you guys keep on going, or, you know, if this is as far as you guys come. How often do you guys have conversations like that? Because again, like, you're right now, I feel like the past 12 months, everybody's had time to, again, plan things out, plan their futures ahead, with you guys planning gigs, putting out new stuff. How often do you guys have, you know, like, real conversations like that when you discuss the future of the band?
Every week. We meet every Monday night, and we have a nice band Zoom call with, you know, our team and us, and we kind of review what happened that week, what's going to happen this week. And right now we're in the middle of a release cycle, so that's obviously super important that every week, you know, talking about what the goals are that week and all that stuff. So as far as like big long-term picture stuff, lately not that much, just because we're in the middle of this release cycle. So everything is about March 26th right now, and planning the videos and you know, all that kind of stuff. So we actually we decided we're going to have a video for every single song on the album. They're not all going to be a full like music video. Like, some will be lyric videos, but we're going to have a piece of video content for every single song on the album, which I don't think I've seen so much, especially from a rock band. So we're excited about that, to be able to give people something to latch onto visually, as well as the music, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I mean, trying to find something that separates you guys too, at least from a content standpoint. Like you said, not too many bands are doing that. At least not, you know, you look at Greta Van Fleet and stuff like that. But, you know, you guys always culminating, like, meeting once a week, trying to figure out, you know, stuff from a creative standpoint. How can we make ourselves stand out? What certain things can we use? Certain riffs like this, certain things like that. How often do you guys come up with stuff that you never use? Like you almost hear like the old, Steven Tyler thing, like Dare to Suck every week. They had those meetings with Aerosmith. You hear those stories. How often do you guys come up with stuff and the majority of it just doesn't work out?
Not as often as you'd think. Most of the stuff we have 10 songs on the album, and I think we had 12 to choose from.
Okay.
So only maybe 13 if you count the one we cut from the original 5. So, we're pretty. A lot of times you'll hear people have 60 songs and they whittle it down to 10. We only had 12 or 13, but we are always writing little riffs, little lyrics, little hooks. We have a Dropbox full of. We have a folder called Ideas, and it's full of stuff that's a minute, 40 seconds, 2 minutes long. Some full songs on there, but a lot of ideas in progress, and those obviously haven't been used yet. But that's not to say they won't be used in the future. So as far as how often do we come up with stuff that doesn't get used, I think at some point all the stuff we like will get used. Mm-hmm. And we might come up with a full song and say, because this happened for some of the songs on the album, we'll come up with a full song, or I'll go back in the archives from 2012 and find an old song and be like, okay, most of the song sucks, but the solo section's cool. Let's pull that out and put it in this new riff that we just wrote. Like those kind of things. That happens a lot. So we'll go back in the archives and say, okay, this is a pretty good riff right here. Just scrap the rest of that song. We'll write something better for that. Or, okay, this is good. Maybe that could fit with this other thing we just found, stuff like that, and kind of piecing it together like a puzzle.
What comes together for you guys to say, like, okay, 10 songs on this new record, and then, like you said, you had 12 songs to choose from. You only had to cut 2, but how does it come down to that? Like, why 10 songs for you guys on the record?
We just wanted a full-length album, and we thought 10 was a reasonable number that we could afford to get mixed and mastered. Yeah. We did all the recording, all the production ourselves, completely DIY, so we saved all that money. But we did want to get it professionally mixed and mastered by our buddy Machine, who's done Lamb of God, Crowbot, Clutch, 4 Year Strong. He's done a lot of amazing bands. And we wanted to work with him. We've worked with him in the past. And we figured 10 songs was about what we could afford with him. Didn't want to do 12 or go above and beyond. And we felt like 10 was a good amount to say what we needed to say, but not get boring and not have any filler. That's something we're really proud of, is this album, in our opinion, obviously we're very biased, doesn't have any filler. And so far the people we've talked to have, for the most part, agreed. There's not, there's something on it for everybody. Your favorite song probably won't be my favorite song. And that's true for anyone, I think, that hears the record. And there's a lot of good stuff there to latch onto. Like if you skew more towards the heavy stuff, there's that. If you skew more towards the softer, sensitive stuff, there's some of that. There's riotous, fun party romps, and then there's the serious, song about addiction. There's all these little things on there that you can pull, you can attach yourself to. And 10 songs was a good amount to do that with. You start getting to 11 and 12, you start getting those couple in there that you're like, I'll skip this one, And I'm sure there's people out there that are going to skip, whatever one they don't like. Sure, I don't care about that. But by and large, I think there's something on this album for everyone.
What's your favorite song on the record?
My favorite song would probably be tracks 3 and or 6. So 3 is called Oh Sugar, and that's just a really, really fun song with a lot of those funk guitar influences that we were talking earlier, a lot of Prince influence in there, sneakily. But also a lot of AC/DC influence, and then with a big pop chorus and a lot of backing vocals and cool stuff going on there. And then number 6 is a track called When I'm Gone, which is all about suicide. So,
okay, is that inspired by anything? Real?
Yeah, that's inspired by my buddy Daniel Kyer committed suicide in 2015. Ooh. So he's been gone for a while. So that's kind of written in his memory and his honor. And that's one of the softer songs, but it crescendos to this what I would consider to be hands down the most powerful moment on the album, the outro of When I'm Gone, the last 40 seconds or so. We got a full gospel choir. Oh, we have it's just like it's a powerful moment, I think, on that record, and it stands out to me as really, really being a moment that I think a lot of people are going to latch onto.
I mean, it's coming from your heart too,
Yeah, and the lyrics throughout that one are all all about hope and suicide and all that stuff. So, obviously want to address a little bit of that. So it's not all just good.
Oh yeah, totally. I mean, that's definitely, I'm sorry to hear about that. I mean, that's probably one of those traumatic experiences. We talk about, the Jimmy Pages, the Ozzy Osbournes, like it's rock and roll, at least for the music that we've listened to, is one generation. Most of those guys are still alive, and you were alluding to the fact that the ones that aren't alive weren't necessarily of old age. You know, you look at the grunge era, the Cobains, the Cornells, Chester Bennington, Scott Weiland, like all of these insanely talented guys, Lane Staley. You go down the list of guys who were just troubled and just couldn't keep it together. I think Cornell was probably the most shocking one because he seemed like he had it more together than almost everybody when you look at any rock star.
Like a Robin Williams kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it was just shocking at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. But then, you know, also suicide's a big part, and also drugs and alcohol, which I guess you can maybe consider that suicide, depending, you know, if it got as bad as someone like Lane Staley or something. Most disturbing thing I found out about Lane Staley's death was he was, I think, 6'3". He was a tall guy. And when they found his body, he was 80 pounds.
That's nuts.
It's unbelievable.
He could blow away in the wind with that. Just think about that. You're as tall as 6'3" and you're 80 pounds.
If you were like 5'4", that would be a very different 80 pounds. That'd still be bad, but that would not be 6'3" bad.
That is
definitely over 6 feet, though.
Oh my God. I mean, he's literally a stick figure at that point.
They also didn't find his body for like 3 days because they didn't know. Like, you know, because he would talk to his mom every now and then on the phone. I'm going from memory here. You might want to fact check this. But he, you know, wasn't answering for a couple of days. And after a couple of days, somebody went and checked on him, and he had been gone for a few days.
Oh my God. I mean, if they hadn't done that, they probably wouldn't have found him for months.
Yeah. At least he was living in an apartment, so they would have found him at some point from, you know, the smell, as gross as that sounds. But
Did you feel like growing up in the Carolinas, things were, you know, because you look at that Seattle era, it's always raining, everything was always dark and gloomy, which kind of led to those, you know, dark behaviors for some of these guys, which culminated in great music, but a lot of it was dark. Most of Nirvana's stuff was very, you know, culminated from rage and anger. Do you feel like, you know, growing up in your childhood, your upbringing was a lot more smoother, which culminated in you having the ability to create your own sound and also appreciate other types of genres of music and be inspired by all these different guys?
Yeah, I think so. I think definitely. You know, the past few days here have been incredible. Like we had some rain for a while, but like, I mean, you're talking LA weather, sunny, clear skies, perfect temperature. The kind of temperature where when you walk outside, you don't feel a difference from inside your home, like just that perfect temperature, you know, that 70, 68 range. And you can't help but look up and just be like, man, we live in an awesome place. And that kind of, you know, I'm sure Seattle has those days too, but a lot of Seattle's dark and rainy and
oh yeah, totally.
I mean, that reflects in the music that's come out of Seattle as well. I think our music kind of reflects where we're from a bit as well. I've definitely heard people say it has a Southern twinge to it. I don't hear that myself personally. I don't have anything against that. I just don't necessarily hear that myself. But people say that, and that's fine. You know, hear what you want to hear. But yeah, I think we definitely want to write, you know, our fair share of happy, fun songs. People need that too. The Backstreet Boys are a great example of that. They came out in, I think, 99, 98.
Right.
When a time when everything was serious and dark, and music was serious and dark, and a lot of darkness was happening in the world. And they came out just singing happy songs about whatever, just teeny bopper songs. And they blew up because the world needed that. And, you know, I can't say that the world needs that right now. Who knows? I don't know what the world needs, but we're going to do our best to make people smile and have a good time. You know, there's also those songs about suicide and addiction and stuff. But if you don't know that going into it, you might pull your own meaning out of that. And it might not necessarily be what I meant when I wrote those lyrics. It might be whatever you take away from it. And that's the most powerful thing to me. For a great example, that's Drops of Jupiter by Train. Everybody thinks that song's about, you know, a lover or whatever. It's about his mom dying. And that's once you realize that, you listen to the song in a whole new light. But most people don't know that. They just pull their own meaning from it. And that's totally fine and totally valid as well. I think, and Chris Cornell, I think, said something to that effect as well. He said, you know, somebody asked him, what did you mean when you wrote this? And he was like, what do you think I meant? Because that's what really matters. I meant what I wrote in one way, but if you take it a different way, that's totally valid as well. You know, I don't even want to tell you necessarily what I meant sometimes. Just take whatever you need to take away from it. And that's more powerful than anything I could tell you, that I meant.
I mean, that's the beautiful thing about music. Like you said, you can interpret it any way you want, because the way you interpret it in its first, hearing, that's what's going to inspire you moving forward. And it's not necessarily like, okay, I wrote this song because of this, but like if you're taking it this way, as long as it's inspiring you and it's connecting with you on a certain level, go bananas. Like, yeah, if that inspires you that way, go ahead. How many of, your songs, like we mentioned, that, when it comes to, being in a certain setting, being inspired by certain people, what are you personally trying to get out of these tracks, trying to inspire people?
I just want people to think that, rock is never going anywhere, Yeah. I want people to have their faith renewed in the rock genre, and they should have it renewed by a lot of other bands as well, not just us, but we're going to throw our hat in the ring as well and see if we can't, be a part of the movement and do our thing. But that's the biggest thing. And I want people to have a good time, and we're coming out of the pandemic, so let's see what happens. I think everybody's going to be chomping at the bit to get out there and really, party it up for better.
You talk about wanting, rock stars of the older generation to like almost, like they don't have to, they're not entitled to, but, to almost give guys like the LA Maybe or any of these other up and coming bands, that quote unquote push in order for, the next generation of rockers to get their stuff out there, to keep the rock genre going at a capacity where it's almost bigger than it ever was. Because, I feel like that's always the goal that you got to strive for in the industry. Who's one or a couple of guys that you'd love to get a chance to play with on stage if you ever had the opportunity? Anyone that you'd ever, loved, that you were influenced by, that you could have an opportunity to like do a solo with as a guitarist or anything like that?
I definitely like to play with Train. They're one of my favorite bands. Black Crowes, Guns, obviously. They don't need me though. They have Slash. So, any of those bands. But, I don't know. I'd be down to do like, a big jam. You see those at like NAMM or something where there's like 10 guitar players on stage. That'd be fun. Or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. But I definitely like to get my band, the LA Maybe, out there as a band, not necessarily me guest soloing on something, but the whole band, out there playing our music, sharing our music with everyone there. I have had the privilege of playing with Duff McKagan, so that was awesome.
Nice. How'd you set that up?
I do a ton of work with his brother Bruce, and it just naturally happened from there. But yes, I know the McKagan family decently well, and I've worked with Duff before. And then Albie has the AC/DC connection, so between Duff and AC/DC, we'll see if we can't get out there on an opening slot or something for a couple shows. That'd be fun.
There's your in. Networking is giving, man. Duff seems like the most upstanding human being, at least in the rock and roll side of the industry.
Yeah, really nice guy. And the show we played was a big show for charity. Bruce put together like an all-star band. I was not one of the stars, obviously, but I was the lead guitar player for the event. But it was Duff. It was Tommy DiCarlo, who's the lead singer for Boston. It was Gary Green, who's the drummer and percussionist for Hootie and the Blowfish, and it was Parthenon Huxley, who works with the ELO guys. So the four of them were kind of the all-stars, and then Bruce filled out keys, and we had Ben Hoyt on violin, who's a good friend of mine, and so I was the lead guitar player for the thing. So they just picked a bunch of songs, and we played Knocking on Heaven's Door and a couple of ELO songs, a couple of this, a little bit of that, and that was an amazing night. But what was fun about it was we got there, call time was like 11 a.m., and then by the time we all left, it was like 11 p.m. So we spent 12 hours together, mostly just hanging out in the green room, talking and, jamming and stuff. So sitting on the couch next to Duff, playing an acoustic guitar, and he's asking me to show him like these licks, and I'm teaching him Bruno Mars songs, and like we're just having a blast hanging out. I'm asking him questions. I'm not trying to be that fanboy. I'm not that kind of guy to begin with, but just chatting as equals. We're not, but that's how they want to be chatted to, I guess.
That's how you would want to be chatted to as well, right? Like you said, like coming off as a fanboy, that's an immediate turnoff, I feel like, for most people. Yeah,
and I don't like that at all. I'm the kind of guy that if I see someone famous, more often than not, I'm not even going to go up to him. I'll just see him from afar and be like, oh, cool, I saw that guy. Like I saw Elton John in Venice one time. we were walking by, and he and his entourage were shopping in a store, and we all looked and we were like, there's Elton John, and we kept walking. So like, it's not, I'm not the guy that's going to be running up there. Oh my God, your music changed my life. And there's nothing wrong with the people that do that. That's just not in my personality. Really, really, really hate to feel like I'm being a bother or a burden or anything like that. And I can pick up on if I think you're feeling that. I pick up on that pretty quick. So I try not to even put myself in that situation. But with the Duff thing, it was different because we were there as equals. We were playing on the same stage. Both had a role to do. So it was a lot more open to just conversation. He was telling me at the time he was recording his he was just wrapping up his recent album, the Americana one. So we were talking about, the recording of that and all that stuff. So it was cool. Yeah, it was a really good time.
You almost have to kind of be called, mentally to be like, okay, like, yes, famous person over there, I'm not going to talk to them. But like, if you had something to say, like I said, like if you were called to say something like, oh, here's an opportunity to, pick his brain about something, you almost have to already have it instilled in your brain, be like, oh, if I ever saw this guy in person, I'd ask him this, as opposed to just seeing someone being like, okay, I'm cool enough to realize that he probably doesn't want to be bothered right
now. Yeah, that's true. And you just don't want to be that Jonah Hill from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. He keeps going to Aldous Snow trying to give him his mixtape. You don't want to be that. So
I mean, there's so many guys out there that probably approach, whether it's any business, really, film, music, sports, like people see someone and they're like, here's my resume, dude, or here's my track. Can you get some of my stuff out there? That's how it works.
Here's the problem with what you said. My. It shouldn't be about you. If you want to get someone's attention, make it about them. Everybody loves themselves. That's who we love more than anyone else most of the time. So if I want to get, your attention, I'm going to talk about all the great things I can do for you and not what you can do for me. Why would you help me? Who am I? Like, why do I deserve your help? So that's something to keep in mind as well.
I mean, it's hard building those relationships. A lot of people really don't understand that. It's like you said, like it's about, here, can you take a look at my stuff, or can you do this for me? Where it's more about, like I said before, networking is about giving. Like everybody loves themselves. Like if you can help out everybody involved in the process, then like that's what's going to get you places. And also at the end of the day, your stuff's got to be good. I'm sure you realize that.
The best way to get someone's attention is to stand out. So someone like Duff probably gets approached by, conservative estimate, he probably meets 1,000 to 3,000 people a month. It could be a lot more than that if he's on the road or something. But, everywhere he goes is constantly getting stopped. So you're not standing out by stopping him and telling him that Paradise City changed your life, sign my shirt. Like he's done that probably 10 times that day already. You're one of the crowd at that point. So there's other ways. You got to think about others, think about what they're going through and what they might be thinking and how they might want to be approached. For example, a lot of these people, the last thing they want to talk about is work. Like, I could talk about music and guitar all day, but if I'm just hanging with my friends, like I don't really necessarily want to be talking the ins and outs of rock and roll. Like I want to be talking about, this new band we found that's not rock at all. I want to be, after we play the rock show, like what do I want to hear? I'm not putting on Guns N' Roses. I'm putting on John Mayer. I'm putting on something chill, putting on the opposite. So, you just got to think about where people might be coming from, how much of something they might be getting already. Do they really need more of that? Just those little things.
It's almost like people specifically have an idea for someone. Like if you meet a Duff McKagan or a Slash in person, you just think like, oh, they're Guns N' Roses. That's their identity. It's like they're more than that. They're a human being. They have so many other interests, dude. Like there's so many other things that you could talk to them about.
Yeah, Duff more than happy to talk about, finance, sports, and all that stuff. So boxing. He does a lot of boxing. That's the way in. If you want to stand out, talk about their interests and not like not their job. Like, do you want to talk about your job when you come home from work? Probably not. Their job happens to be really cool, but that doesn't change the fact that it's still a job. Especially after 30, 40 years of doing it, like we see it and we think it's the coolest, glamorous thing in the world, but we don't know all the dirty details, all the long nights, the flights, the no sleep, the this, the that, all the stuff that we don't consider comes with it. Even at any level, it doesn't matter. Everybody has problems, whether you're Elon Musk worth billions or you're broke in the street. Everybody has problems. It's just, different problems.
Oh yeah. Different devils in a sense. I think that's what The Rock always says. But when you guys get to that point, like touring on the road, bus after bus, plane ride after plane ride. Like, what's going to be your mentality for all of that? Because again, like that's a very gritty schedule. You got to have a lot of grit and a lot of tenacity in order to pull all of that stuff off and have everybody buy into it at the same time.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see how we shake it out. It'll take everyone believing in the product, believing in the goal to make it happen. Hopefully we don't get on each other's nerves too much. I think alone time's nice. Put on Netflix, put in your AirPods, sit quietly.
Oh yeah.
But when it's time to rock, it's time to rock. I think if you've seen the videos, I think you understand the kind of energy we're going to be bringing to the stage. So that's really important to us too, to be able to really, really, go nuts.
Well, the new singles and EPs are out. Sucker Punch, Mr. Danger as well. The new record coming out March 26th. I have one last question for you before I let you go and take too much of your time here. Probably a question you hear, at the beginning of interviews, but I missed it. And now that I'm thinking about it, it's because you talk about, the album, big Star Wars influence. And I see that in the logo on, the Mr. Danger artwork as well as Sucker Punch. But why the name LA Maybe? What inspired you to pick that name?
So I was in the Chicago airport, and I think I was eating or something, and I heard someone behind me say, "Oh, she gave me the old LA maybe," and I thought, "Oh, that's a cool phrase," and I knew what he meant. The Los Angeles, the typical, stereotypical, flaky,
right.
Can't commit yes or no, just kind of sitting in limbo until something better comes along. And I just really love that name. So I texted the group chat and I said, let's be the LA Maybes with an S. And Foz, our drummer, said, let's just drop the S. So we dropped the S. And that was the band name from then on. We had the band name before we knew what genre we were going to play. We were still talking, we can all do a lot of different stuff. So we were like, do we want to be like a pop punk band? Do we want to be like a metal band? Do we want to be, more pop rock or whatever? And eventually we just decided to write, what kind of felt good to us. And that ended up being this kind of classic rock vibe, which is my favorite. So we kind of ended up at home base, I think.
I mean, you guys obviously culminate together, and all of your inspirations are going to come together to create that sound at the end of the day. And again, Sucker Punch out now, Mr. Danger out now, and then, of course, the new record coming out March 26th, 2021. Dallas Dwight, thank you so much for being gracious enough to talk to me here for about, an hour and 15 minutes here. Hopefully I didn't take too much of your time, but hopefully you guys, again, see you guys out in Greensboro in a few weeks, your first gig since who knows when, because of everything going on. And again, I wish you guys best of luck with the new record, and hopefully you guys are staying safe during these insanely weird times we're in, man.
Absolutely, Jack. Thank you so much for having me. Super excited to be here, and let's catch up soon. I'll send you the album right now.
Definitely, man. Hopefully I'll be out in Charlotte sometime soon. I got a lot of family out there. See you guys play. Nice. Hopefully you guys are doing shows by the time I get there.
Yeah, let us know when you're here for sure.
Sweet, man. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Awesome. Thanks.